Hello, welcome to our channel. So this is Atrium Scriptum. However, I'll be reading to you in advance the loss on sales. So let me read to you the nature and form of contract. So as we all know, contract, there must be a meeting of the mind. If there was no meeting of the mind, there was no contract. Okay, so Article 1548. By the contract of sale, one of the contracting parties obligates himself to transfer the ownership of and to deliver a determinate thing, and the other party, therefore, a certain price or certain in money or its equivalent. So, contract of sale may be absolute or conditional. So, it was already stated in there that there are two kinds of contract of sale, which are absolute or conditional. So let us go over the concept of contract of sale. So as stipulated in Article 1548, the contract of sale is a contract whereby two parties involved. Let's say the other party is called the seller or the vendor obligates himself to deliver something, and on the other hand, the buyer or purchaser or the vendee, who in his part binds himself to pay therefore a sum of money or its equivalent, known as the price. Okay, so there are actually 6 characteristics of the contract of sale. So my code in here is CBOCNP. CBOCNP. That is my code. So first characteristic of a contract of sale, it must be consensual. So when we say consensual, it is perfected by mere consent without any further act. So there must be a consent. There is consent. Contract of sale is characterized by the presence of a consent. Then next, bilateral. When we say bilateral, there is reciprocity. So when we say reciprocity, let's say here comes the seller selling something, and in return here comes the buyer buying what the seller is selling. Okay, there is an obligation to deliver a thing, and in return there is an obligation to pay for that determinate thing. So third, it must be onerous. So when we say onerous, the thing sold is conveyed in consideration of the price, so it must be paid or vice versa. Then fourth, it must be commutative. When we say commutative, the price is equivalent to that of the determinate thing. So there is no such thing as an unjust enrichment in here. However, the contract may be aleatory, it says in here, as in the case of sale of hope, just like sweepstakes ticket. Okay, then next, it must be nominate. When we say nominate, as the civil code describe, namely there is sale. And lastly, principal. When we say principal, it does not depend for its existence and validity upon another contract. So the whole contract of sale, once it's perfected, that's all. So there is no such thing as it depends on another contract. The contract of sale in here is the contract itself. That's all. Then next, this also let's just recap that characteristics of a contract of sale. CBOCNP. Consensual, consent, bilateral, reciprocity, onerous, there is a consideration, commutative, there is an equivalence, what's that again? Nominate, which is there is sale, and of course the last one, it's principal. It's not dependent on any other contract other than the contract of sale itself. Okay, Then next is the essential requisites of the contract of sale. So in here, there are 3 requisites of the contract of sale. First one, of course, there must be consent or meeting of the minds. We all know that, meeting of the minds. So this refers to the consent on the part of the seller to transfer and deliver, and on the part of the buyer to pay. Okay. Then next, there must be an object or subject matter. So object or subject matter, this refers to the determinate thing. It's not just any other thing, but it must be determinate thing, which is the object of the contract. The thing must be determinate, or at least capable of being made to determinate, because if the seller and the buyer differ in regard to the thing sold, there is no meeting of the mind, therefore there is no contract. And the third one is the cost or consideration. This refers to the price certain in money or its equivalent, such as a check or a promissory note. So pwede pala yun. So perhaps this is actually a cost or consideration in a conditional contract of sale, which is the consideration for the thing sold. So technically, the cost in sale is, as to the seller, the buyer's promise to pay the price, and as to the buyer, the seller's promise to deliver the thing sold. So that is the cost or consideration of the contract of sale. So those are the 3 essential elements: COC, consent or meeting of the minds, object or subject matter, which is the determinate thing, and of course cost or consideration, which is, for example, a check, promissory note, or let's say cash. Then there are actually natural elements. To differentiate it from essential elements, these natural elements are those that are deemed to exist in certain contracts in the absence of any contrary stipulation, like warranty against eviction or hidden defects. So later on, perhaps we'll be reading this one. And next, there are actually accidental elements. So what are these accidental elements? These are those which may be present or absent depending on the stipulation of the parties, like conditions, interest, penalty, time, or place of payment. Especially so when it is, let's say, there are certain consideration, for example, installment basis. Okay. There are 2 kinds of contract of sale, as cited in Article 1458. Remember that. There is an absolute contract of sale and, of course, a conditional contract of sale. So when we say absolute, the sale is not subject to any condition whatsoever, and where title or ownership passes to the buyer upon the delivery of the thing. So for example, I bought this bottle of water which costs 15 pesos. So the seller is selling it, then here comes me being so thirsty, I bought it, I paid 15 pesos. That's all. The contract of sale was perfected. The mere fact that I accept the offer of the seller that this determinate thing cost 15 pesos and I paid for it 15 pesos. That's all. That is an absolute contract of sale. So when we say conditional contract of sale, the sale contemplates a contingency, and in general where the contract is subject to certain conditions. So this enters the accidental elements that we actually mentioned before. The conditions, interest, penalty, time or place of payment, or even so with respect to that of the natural elements, the warranty against eviction or hidden defects, especially sa mga, let's say, appliances siguro, like that. Okay. And the delivery of the thing sold does not transfer ownership until such conditions stipulated on the contract of sale is fulfilled. So let's say I bought a certain appliance, let's say washing machine, and installment basis for 6 months long. So transfer of ownership will only happen pag na-fulfill ko na yung obligation ko, which is paying for the total full amount of that certain appliance, which is the